Week 6, Special Needs Research. What's it about? It's about conducting research with people who may be considered to have special needs in some way. And it could be anything. For example, they may use a different language, have a different lifestyle, varying ability levels, or they're simply unique. And we're all just different, but the similarities are greater than the differences. However, there could be some cultural issues impacting on the way people share and exchange information, or there may be activity or behavioural differences, and these need to be taken into account. We all come from different age groups, and each age group has its own special needs. So doing research across different cultures, different abilities, age groups, genders, or whatever, does have its particular touch points. Developing the research question. Special needs research can and does have an influence on the way society is constructed, and for this reason it's necessary to develop a research question that isn't capable of being manipulated or used to disadvantage the research audience we're engaging with. We need to consider what's driving the research project, what's behind it, whether it is to achieve change, whether it's to address weaknesses in a current system or to change direction completely, whether it's to inform government policy or whatever. This is not to suggest that the research question or objectives should be manipulated, only that it is thought through very seriously in terms of the potential consequences of research outcomes. We've previously learned about the concept of for the greater good, and we really need to ensure that our research study won't pose a threat to the greater good of the special needs audience participating in it. As Keltner says in relation to for the greater good, power is not solely the domain of the power-hungry. It emerges in all social relationships. It's part of every social interaction where people have the capacity to influence one another's states, which is really every moment of life. And I think you'll agree that this describes the relationship that can be established between a researcher and the people who are participating in the research study. Responses are situational. For a start, there can be language differences. We need to think about using an interpreter. We must also be aware that there are obstacles and limitations to this. Quite often, participants can be anxious to please the interpreter or not to embarrass themselves in front of the moderator. And in recent times, we had an incident when we were doing some poisons labelling research where the participants were very reluctant to have what they were saying translated into English because it was embarrassing to them the way they had used a certain product. So we must understand cultural differences, and there are individualistic and there are collectivist cultures. And this impacts on a range of issues such as their buying behaviour, their cultural pride, the way they relate to products and services, their attitudes to political and legal systems, and so on. We must weigh up any likely differences in advance and whether they will have some impact on the research outcomes, and we need to select the appropriate tools before commencing, which could include same-sex moderators or same community moderators, sign language interpreters. We need to find out whether we require tactile signing as well, more convenient venues or culturally appropriate surrounds, foreign language interpreters, aids for vision, hearing or mobility. And also we need to think about the impact of homelessness or geographic distance on people's ability to participate. There are a number of projective techniques to be used in qualitative research, and they're a good way of getting people to open up about themselves. And this applies as much to general research as it does to special needs studies. There are different projective techniques. They may be constructivist, personification, expressive, and so on. Personification is a tool that helps us understand how the group perceives a certain organisation, a person, for example, or a brand. So we could say this brand, if this brand were a car, what kind of a car would it be? Would it be a Lexus or a Toyota? Would it be new or old? Would it have low mileage or high mileage? Would it be sleek and perfect, or would it be a little battered around the edges? And that gives you some idea of what we would be finding out. Expressive techniques are designed to elicit mental mind maps to discover how people construct things mentally, the thought processes that they go through. And in this case, we would ask them to think about a particular person or a brand or a situation and to act it out, or to draw it or paint it. And that's very helpful for people who have difficulty expressing things verbally. Word association aims at understanding users' vocabulary in relation to a product or a service or a brand, and it involves using a number of cards with words on them and having people group those that are applicable to the particular product or service that they feel it relates to. Most importantly, we must build trust with our research audience.